Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Scrutiny Committee meeting of the Melton Borough Council. Members are reminded that we will be using the audio-visual system this evening, and the meeting will also be streamed live on YouTube. There's a quick reference card placed on the desk in front of you, which provides instruction on how to use the basic speaking function of the microphone. Members are asked to physically raise their hands in the usual way to indicate they wish to speak and to use the microphones when speaking. The microphone is live when the red light displays. Please switch mobile phones to silent. Should you need to leave the room during the meeting, unless it's an emergency evacuation, please use the doorways marked exit and entrance. I will now provide a reminder of the evacuation procedure. In the event of having to evacuate the council chamber, please leave by one of the 6 emergency exits around the sides of the chamber. Please assemble at the far side of the front car park nearest to the park entrance. Officers will be on hand to assist persons who require any assistance. Public recording of the meeting. There is legislation that allows the public to film, record, or use social media at a council meeting. This must not be disruptive to the good order of the meeting, nor include any filming or recording of the public seating area. I confirm that the following members are present and participating in this meeting. Have we got Elaine? We haven't got Elaine, have we? Yes.
Councillor Holmes rang me just as I was leaving, and something's cropped up and she can't make it tonight. So
She can't make it at all?
No, she can't. Send her apologies.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Sorry about that. Thank you. So we participating in this meeting. We have Councillor Rob Bindloss, Councillor Prue Chandler, Councillor Robert Child, Councillor Jean Douglas, Councillor Chris Evans, Councillor Chris Fisher, and Councillor Mel Stedman. We are also welcoming the portfolio holder for Council Homes and Landlord Services, Councillor Ronan Brown. In addition, we have the following Melton Borough Council officers in attendance. Director for Housing and Communities, Michelle Howard. Assistant Director for Housing, Craig Spence. Communities and Neighbourhood Manager, Albert Wilson. Leisure, Culture and People Manager, Aisha Rahman. Senior Democratic Services and Scrutiny Officer, Adam Green. Domestic Services Officer, Helen Ainge. And a special welcome to our Chief Exec. We are honoured today.
David Scott as well.
Pardon?
David Scott as well.
Oh, I beg your pardon, David. I'm so sorry. And David Scott. What's your actual title, David? I can't remember.
It's Corporate Services Manager, Chair.
Oh, yes. Sorry, that's it. Apologies for absence. So we've had Elaine Holmes and we've had Councillor Illingworth. Now, the minutes, we're here to confirm the minutes, but the minutes have got to be changed quite a bit. Hopefully members have received my email with the suggested change to the minutes. On page 3, sorry, on page 5, third bullet down, that bullet point, that all that information in that paragraph needs to be deleted and to be replaced by the following. The year-to-date void performance at the end of August 2021 was 68.89 days. A considerable amount of work has been completed by officers on the void process. There have been recent void properties turned around in under 10 days, which provides officers confidence that the process revision and clarity will enhance performance moving forward. I think Councillor Child, you've got another correction for the minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The page 3, first bullet point should be replaced by that I advise that by working together between the local cricket club and the Beaver Cricket and Countryside Trust, coaching has been provided for primary school children between the months of May and July, and this has resulted in a marked increase in numbers over the last few years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, so do we have a proposer for the minutes? Of those people who were here
Yeah,
at the
I'll
last
propose them,
meeting?
Chair. I'll
Yep,
propose.
yep,
yeah.
yep, councillor Bindloss. And a seconder? Yeah, councillor Child. So could we have a show of hands? All those in favour of the minutes as amended? Any abstentions? No, so that's carried. Yeah. The minutes are approved, subject to those amendments. Declarations of interest.
Yep.
Yeah, I invite members who wish to make a declaration in respect of items on the agenda of this meeting.
Yeah, I have a declaration of interest, a pecuniary interest on item 7, so I shall be leaving the room for that.
Now we're looking at the cabinet forward plan, which is item 4 on the agenda. And this is fairly new for us to have as a separate item, you know, but it does remind us what cabinet is doing and planning to do. So if anybody have got any comments about the cabinet's forward plan? No, in which case I will just make one. I'm pleased to see that the tenants will be consulted on their views re the priorities for the council's landlord services. I think that's really important and it's good to see. Yeah, that can only be a good thing. Right, review of the scrutiny work programme. This outlines the areas of work which we expect to scrutinise during this civic year. I understand that Councillor Illingworth has already started gathering information re car parking charges. So hopefully we will hear more about that subject at the next meeting. Councillor Bindloss, did you want to say a few words about the youth services? I know you're working on it.
It's work in progress at the moment, actually, Chair. Yeah, I have spoken to a number of people now, but I'm still waiting to speak to others. So at the moment, it really is just work in progress. But I would imagine it's a bit frustrating sometimes because, of course, you're just waiting for people to come back to you. And sometimes it could take a little bit longer than you may hope it to be. But I would imagine that by the next meeting, I'll have some kind of clear idea. Thank you.
At Audit and Standards Committee last week, Councillor Pritchett had a number of queries stroke concerns re the council's community grant scheme. It was agreed at the meeting that the information Councillor Pritchett was seeking was more relevant to a scrutiny committee than to audit. After discussing the matter with Vice Chair Rob Bindloss and the scrutiny officer, it was decided that this could be a case where we could invite a non-scrutiny member to be co-opted to undertake a review. Councillor Pritchett confirmed that this is something he would like to do. It's the first time we've co-opted or tried to co-opt anybody, and he would be interested. I've contacted the internal auditor to get any more information she might have. And so I hope, yeah, I've contacted, and when that information is received, we can take the matter forward. But there are quite, in addition, there are quite a few suggested topics in the work programme. If anybody would like to pick up any of those items to think about doing a review and adding them to the work programme properly for them to be carried forward as a review or a task and finish group, perhaps you can talk to Rob or me, you know, if you want any more, if you want to discuss it or to work out what you could be doing to gather the information. So are there any comments about what we've got on the work programme? Any ideas or anything you'd like to add? Councillor Chandler, yes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Allotments. We used to have an allotment competition because I was always dragged into judging them, but that sort of fell apart. And I've always been concerned about the number of unused allotments, which are very degrading really to those who are doing allotments. We've got some wonderful gardeners on some of the bigger sites, but then you've got sort of rubbish growing next to it, and we don't seem to ever put any weed killer or, well, anything on them. I mean, there were some of the gardens were absolutely full of insects and it's very, very disheartening if you've got a good garden, you're growing good vegetable and there's black fly next to you and your broad beans become covered in it. And I do think we ought to really get to grips with the allotments. I mean, I don't know where we've gone with rents. At one stage they were talking about not having any rents at all to try and encourage people to do them, but it's getting the bad allotments back into use that's one of the problems. I mean, I don't know if any of the officers here tonight know where we are with the allotments.
I don't know. I think they just sort of have a life of their own, I think. But and one, of course, we don't control at all in the town, the one in Victoria Street. But
Well, it's a big sign to make sense.
yes, yeah. Oh yeah, we do have quite a few which are controlled by the council, but there is one which is sort of No, I think this was put on because of the concerns you've got that they're being underused, and as well with the idea of healthy eating, and we should be making sure that they're better utilised. In the past, we had a bit of a scandal where I think it was a scandal where we had one person had 3 large allotments, and I felt that he were having them as a business. And that wasn't really the intention of allotments. But if anybody wants to take this up and start digging into what, to how we can take it forward, then that will be good news. But I certainly hope that something will happen about it.
If I may come back, Madam Chairman, I mean, in the villages, there's waiting lists for allotments now. I mean, at Bottisford, we're looking for sites to provide more. Councillor Stedman says they are in her ward.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the people interested in taking allotments, if we could square them up a bit, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, but the allotments that are growing the weeds they're not. I presume they're just not being used. They're not being rented. Yeah. Yeah. Tell me. Yeah.
I must admit, I did think that I thought there was a waiting list in town for allotments. I may be wrong on that, but I did think that there was. I can certainly think of residents within my ward that would like an allotment. So I did think that there was a waiting list on these. But, yeah.
And that's what this is about, to make sure that we do know what's going on in allotments, because that I know for lots of people, an allotment is an important part of their life, and I think as well about the unemployed or even those who are sick. And I know in the past, we did talk about having the council putting in some raised beds at some of the allotments for the use of wheelchair users. So there's a lot to be thought about
now, Madam Chairman.
Yeah, I beg your pardon.
That's a statutory requirement now, I understand. I think so. Yeah.
This issue on allotment, some of the rural wards haven't got any spare ground. But could a report be prepared by the director for another meeting on allotments? Could it come to scrutiny again? With more information.
Yeah. We'll get some basic information and then think about taking it forward. Oh yeah. Albert.
Thanks, Chair. Allotment sites currently fall under the Corporate Assets Directorate. It's certainly something that my team, from an environmental maintenance perspective, don't have a great deal of influence over. But I'm sure that the corporate manager for the corporate assets manager will be able to provide more information on that.
So that, yeah, I
Useful,
think
thank
that,
you.
sorry,
It would be useful, so we've got a little bit more on the table to consider. Thank you.
no, and I know in the past there was more interest, there were prizes awarded, there was yeah, and what's going on in Victoria Street, I've got no idea. It's just privately managed, and I've got no idea what goes on there, and I think the council should know more about what's going on. So yeah, thanks for that. Thanks.
I'll just check we're finished on that item. Could I move on? Is that okay? To another one. I see on the item, and I remember this sort of complaints about GPs. And I know this is very, obviously very much in the news at the moment. You only have to watch Facebook when it's up and see what's happening. And one of the most common complaints we seem to have from residents is their access to GPs at the moment. We've all suffered, and I know the GPs have suffered over the pandemic, but what seems to have happened, according to what the people I see, is that the GPs have isolated themselves to a certain extent and are continuing to do so. And the numbers I've seen from my residents actually getting to see a GP is way down from what it was before the pandemic. I don't know, when I'm looking at the Chief Exec, because his name is on this, how we can get into that area, but I think it is of real concern to our residents, as you only have to see in Melton and at Bottisford, Long Clawson. Every surgery I look at, there seem to be complaints. I know in Long Clawson, the poor, I was told, and I know it's a fact, that the receptionist is usually in a situation, unfortunately, where she's sworn at and in tears by the end of the day, just because of what's happening at the moment and the pressure on the services. And I just feel, as a council, we need to make something happen here, because we're coming up to Melton Mental Health Day and all the rest of it. We know people have suffered greatly because of the pandemic, and not only physically, but mentally too. And I know the NHS is under a lot of pressure, but I think also as a council, we need to be making sure that residents realise we know that things are not really where they should be, because I know for a fact the GPs are not seeing, and the government says the pandemic is in a situation where they can be face-to-face. Universities have gone back, football crowds have gone back, but I know the GPs are seeing nowhere near as many patients as they used to on a day-to-day basis. And I'll be blunt about it, we're still paying them the same amount. And we all know that seeing a GP face-to-face cannot be replaced by a phone call or a video call. It's not the same for people who are suffering. And I just wonder where we can go with this, or if we can do anything, Chair, because I just feel it's an important issue for our residents at this point in time, that we show we're caring about this and we understand. We know that GPs are under pressure, don't get me wrong, but I think it's time that they realise that they're in the job and they've got to do something about it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, it is a real problem, and it came out in our survey, didn't it? The problem, there's, out of all the local services, the GPs came out worse. But part of our evidence that we gathered, for the people report, was national evidence as well, and I can't remember the names, but the evidence, we have the evidence which is available, and nationally, well, one GP who had some sort of organisation, and she was saying that she thinks the GP service is absolutely unfit for purpose, and it's about to collapse completely. But it does seem that there are particular problems at Latham House. I don't know whether Councillor Brown would like to say anything. It doesn't matter if you don't. No, okay. But yeah.
This one. Just some assurance in terms of work that we're doing as officers on this. So it is a particular challenge in terms of access to services, not just the primary healthcare services. And perhaps right, it did come up in the scrutiny that's just been done in terms of COVID recovery. There's a lot of work going on across Leicestershire at the moment in terms of developing a new health and wellbeing strategy. And as part of that, looking at actually what might that look like at a very local level. So the premise of developing community health and wellbeing plans. There may well be a role for scrutiny in helping with that, and that will consider a number of aspects that are impacting on the health and wellbeing of Melton residents, and access to services is one of the key themes that's coming up for the Health and Wellbeing Board. So I think it's a very timely thing to mention as something that could absolutely be built into a work plan if you chose to do so.
And the other point is we were going to sort of do much more ourselves, but then it was noticed that there's been a CCG survey, I think. They've been trying to gather information, so that I think there might be some information out there generally. But when it comes to Latham House, it does seem to be a one-off. Yeah, Councillor Steadman.
It's not just Latham House that we have a problem with. I think since we've come out of lockdown, the amount of complaints I get about Long Clawson surgery now, which you have to ring before 11 o'clock if you want to see a doctor. You have to explain to an unqualified receptionist what your condition is and what's wrong with you, which I think is absolutely diabolical. And the advice they give to you is get online before 7:30 and try and book it that way. So effectively, they've made their services inaccessible to the elderly. I mean, it really has come back terrible since we've come out of lockdown. And I don't know if they're following new government guidelines or they've lost the way, but what's happening. But we used to have open access. You literally used to just turn up, put your name down and wait. And now nobody can get in to see a doctor.
I know it's, I think that perhaps in some ways it has collapsed. Councillor Chandler, Prue.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's likewise at Bottisford, and I booked a flu jab with the pharmacy because if you go to the doctors, you have to queue up outside for up to an hour on the day you're asked to go. And it's just not on for elderly people to stand outside in all weathers. And we have got quite an active patients participation group, and they've had a number of complaints, but the surgery itself seems totally indifferent about the whole situation. And I don't think we're going back to the old system. I think we're going to have this either virtual thing or somebody assessing you, as Councillor Steadman says, who's totally unqualified. And we have to ring before 8 o'clock in the morning. You're quite lucky at 11 o'clock. You can't get through anyway.
I think it's sorry, Chair. I know everybody says, well, you know, of course it's COVID. You know, this is the problem. We've got this issue with COVID, but why is there an issue? That's what I would like to know. What is the issue? What is the problem? How have we regressed so much in such a short period of time? What is the reason? Not just that it's COVID or that it's this or it's that, but what is the actual root cause of this? Because if we knew what the root cause of this was, then perhaps we could do something about it, or we could at least try and do something about it. But until somebody turns around and says to us, of course, it's because of this or this or this, as opposed to just a blanket, well, it's COVID, isn't good enough, frankly.
Interesting, because I know there is a patients panel or something, isn't there, at Latham House? And I know Alan Pearson used to be part of it. If we can track down the person or the people who are involved there, perhaps they'll have some more information. Or what I will say, the only contact I had with Latham House was I phoned to make sure that I would be told when I could have a jab. And I was astonished how quickly I got through to them, because I sat there expecting to wait for an hour or so, but I didn't. I got through, and I got told what would happen. And when my turn came for the jab, I did get the phone call. But that was quite a straightforward matter, you know. And so I suppose some people manage, but it's like third world, really. You know, it's potluck, and it's not a proper service. But no, I do think we need to get to the bottom of what's happening. And like Rob says, why? What is their problem? Councillor.
Is it not possible, Chair, that we actually invite someone urgently to come and address this meeting? Because I think our residents deserve better than what's happening at the moment. And this is a priority. It's got to change. As the Deputy Chair said, pandemic seems to be made an excuse for all kinds of things now. The government are saying it's not over, but it's a situation where people can hold face, like we're doing now, face to face. I can't, just like the Vice Chair, I can see no reason why the services are still at a level they were in the pandemic. And that's what they're doing. They're just not, I got the statistics for Longclaw and it's appalling. It's appalling how poor the number of GP face-to-face consultations they're doing. And I'm told it's the same in Bottisford, it's the same in Melton. The numbers are something like 10% of what they were face-to-face than they were before, which, I think we need someone from CCG or something to come here and explain why that's happened and why they aren't picking up the pieces now.
If it's of help to the committee, I'm quite happy to work with the chair to compile a list of key questions and identify those key contacts and ask them to come and speak with the committee. And that may also help to shape that ongoing work programme and areas that members might want to look into in a bit more detail. But we have really good relationships with our health colleagues, and I'm sure they'll be receptive, but it'd be helpful for them to understand the concerns and things that people are experiencing so that they can prepare for that meeting, if that would be of help.
Thank you. I think that'd be really, really helpful. And it's just not right, is it? We're just not getting the service that we're entitled to, though they do have problems. But no, to understand their reasons. But something before the pandemic, I was quite disturbed when I discovered that, bearing in mind, as far as I know, it's the biggest practice in the country with 26 GPs. As far as I know, that was the situation. And that means that they should have lots of clinics and there should be all sorts of extras, really. And what really shocked me was when I discovered that they had stopped doing the diabetes clinics, when we know diabetes is an increasing problem. And because they didn't get the special funding or something, they just stopped. And I thought that was such a shame. I really, really did. So there are other, that I don't know, there's just not a happy relationship, is there, between the Latham House especially, but I know there are problems elsewhere. But no, if we can do as Michelle says, and that would be useful. Yeah, thank you. There are things which might interest and people can pick up. Did you want to say? Sorry, Rob. No. Right. Item 6. Now, I'd now like to invite Councillor Brown, portfolio holder for council homes and landlord services, to make the presentation. And then, unless it's a matter for clarification, can we leave questions until after the presentation? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can everybody hear me there properly? Yeah. Yep. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair, for inviting me to make this presentation this evening. I'll be going through the progress that we've made really over the last 18 months in the service area, the challenges that we still have, and the next step. So it's very much an open discussion. I'll be assisted obviously by the Assistant Director here, Craig Spence, and I'll ask Craig to come in to help me with some technical information in which we'd like to share with you tonight as well, so that you have a full flavour of actually what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve, what we're trying to improve. Okay, so really there's 3 areas in which we could move the slide on. There's 3 areas in which myself and the officers are quite proud that has actually been achieved by the council over the last 18 months. And the first one is, as you see on the slides, is the compliance area of our landlord health and safety. This is an area, that I had concerns about, and working with the chief executive and the then portfolio constipation, we actually had to self-report ourselves to the regulator. But actually, that was quite a positive thing to do, because it gives us the impetus to actually move on and actually start improving the service and actually starting to carry out that compliance work that we need to do, such as the fire safety, gas safety, electrical safety, hygiene, asbestos, radon, etc. And the really pleasing thing is that we're now at 100%. So we have 100% of our certificates. We're carrying out our weekly, our monthly checks, etc. And that's the most important thing anybody can do as a landlord, is keep our tenants safe. And hopefully our tenants are a lot more safe today than they were 18 months ago. And that's a credit to everybody involved. The second area that we've managed to make great inroads into is our housing management system, or as they call it here, our integrated housing management system, Northgate. And I'm just going to hand over to Craig just to explain how important that is and what it actually means, if that's okay, Craig.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. I suppose the key point on that is around system development. It's around making sure that the decisions that we make in relation to our stock are made on solid foundations of data, and they're data-led decisions. With that in mind, we've recently gone live with 2 key modules within the system. The assets module, which basically captures all of the information that's going to be forthcoming from our stock condition data, which then also allows us to build extensive capital works programs moving forward. And also our asbestos module. So obviously the asbestos module kind of speaks for itself. So it stores all of the relevant pertinent kind of inspection data within that system, and kind of gives us a RAG rating on each property. The benefit of it all being in one place and in a central location just means that we only have to access one system to find all that information out. And it means that we can give our contractors that direct access to those asbestos reports, so they can look at where the asbestos is both present within our property, but it also means that where we have a property coming up to be vacant or to be void, we can be prepared with regards to the works that we need to undertake in that property. So those are the key kind of foundations and building blocks we've put in place at present, but we're also continuing that evolution. So the next modules that are going to be delivered are going to be around our kind of capital programs, and also further compliance reporting within the housing management system. So it just enables us to make data-led decisions, and also ensures that all of the data is in one place at any one time. Coming back to the compliance really, really quickly, I think the key point for scrutiny there is that this time last year we had lower limited assurance on both kind of the controlled environment and kind of the way that we were managing that. We've moved that forward to a good and a satisfactory assurance in that 12-month period. So that just hopefully provides you with that assurance.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Basically, we have a new tenancy agreement and a new handbook for our tenants to actually have available to not only know what conditions to have to adhere to, but actually what they should expect of us as the landlord as well. Because that's very, very important that we do those 2 things consistently. And there will be examples of the booklets, etc. You'll be able to get a copy of in either this evening or in the next few days. Okay, so we've got some challenges, and it's been no surprise to everybody in the current environment. Craig's just also alluded to, our ICT systems, etc. But it's also that investment in our stock and getting up to decent homes, etc. But we need to know what our stock actually looks like and how decent it is. So, what age did the components, i.e., the kitchen, the bathroom, when did they need to be replaced? What age are they now, etc., etc. So you build up that profile, and that capital program can be built up and developed, etc. It's also using that as well as to what that would then mean, what sort of cash is available capital wise, as to what maybe some new build opportunities might be available to the officers to go away and work up for us to recommend to deliver some new housing. And then also it's also where we can procure new services, good services, join it up and actually maybe enhance those services, such as making our homes more efficient, making our homes more safe, etc., as and when those requirements are when we determine that actually we would like that to actually happen. We then have the white paper, which you've all seen in the news, etc. It's been hanging around, I think, for the last 12 months. Be interesting with the new Secretary of State that we have. what direction in which Mr. Gove takes us in, because we were certainly going down one of, basically just building lots and lots more housing, etc. I think that's going to sit back, and it was interesting this week that at the Conservative Party conference that Martin Gove says is he expects that social landlords need to do a lot more to raise the standards of the housing in which we have across the country. So it'll be interesting if that happens. I hope it does, because that's what we need to do. We shouldn't have low aspirations just because you live in social housing. It should be high aspirations no matter where you live. And that's certainly the message that I want to make sure that this council moves forward. But in that, it's all really about the white paper is about tenants, and it's about the voice of tenants, how we're delivering good quality, safe homes, and giving tenants a voice in what their homes and what the services which we deliver to them looks like. So that might be part of procurement processes for new contractors, employing new staff, etc. I want to see tenants involved a lot more in the approach. And we are going to use this through the work that we're doing with Shell's director. We're going to look at resetting our tenant offer. And that's going to be really, really important. And we've spoken to TFEC, and they've been really, really receptive to it. And we're going to do a bit of a celebration around what TFEC has done since 1999, and reset the agenda, hopefully, for the next 20 years of where we're going to go. And that's been really, really positive. Stuff which, the officers are a lot more consistent on is the consistency of approach. How we're making our decisions that actually is policy led and not just shooting off the hip, really. I think there's been a history here within Melton of it's what we like at the time is what we're going to do, rather than actually looking at delivering it as to what the need really is. And obviously, finally, it's providing obviously good quality homes. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I just want to, because just so you get the flavour of the detail, I'm just going to hand over to Craig just quickly for one more time, just really to take us through the strategy around planned maintenance and what we're doing there. So really the stock condition and how we're going to keep proactively driving that forward. Craig, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, no problem at all. So at present, we have an external company delivering our stock condition surveys across the whole of the borough, with the aim of completing 80% of our stock by the end of this month. So that's somewhere in the region of about 1,540 of our 1,800 properties. That will then give us a real firm baseline and understanding of the condition of our stock, allowing us to then import that information into our database and then extract kind of our capital programs. But not only that, the contractors also a specialist in their arena. They're going to be providing us with 2 very detailed reports around what our stock investment options are with regards to how we can increase our decency to both decent homes and decent homes plus standards. So that will give us a very clear steer with regards to kind of our HRA business planning moving forward and understanding the affordability of that. On that point, we've been very, very proactive and on the front foot with regards to procuring our contractors to ensure that we have contracts in place to enable us to deliver those programs as and when we know where they need to be delivered. So we've utilised a dynamic purchasing system to enable us to contract contractors that can be very reactive and responsive to the needs of our business. So that's around kind of windows and doors programs, kitchen and bathroom programs, roofing contractors, etc. So we're very, very much geared up to ensure that we can meet the demands of that capital program. And I suppose realistically, it's about keeping up the pace. Last year, despite COVID, we spent more on our capital program than we had done, I think, for the past 12 years prior to that. And that's something to celebrate, but it's also something to also kind of reflect upon why we're in the position we're in. So we know that we need to invest a lot of our capital reserves to ensure that our decency levels are enhanced. And I suppose it's just about making sure that we keep our finger on the pulse. We ensure that we have ongoing stock condition data. So, looking at making sure that our strategy moving forward is to refresh our stock condition data every 4 years so that the data that we're working on is current and we understand the decency levels, but also bringing that tenant side of things into it too, ensuring that the tenant understands their responsibilities and understanding their responsibilities to maintain their property and understand that there are penalties and there will be kind of sanctions delivered against those individuals that don't look after their properties. So that's kind of our planned maintenance approach. So back over to you, Councillor.
Thank you, Craig. It's very helpful. Okay, moving on to the next slide. and looking at responsive repairs. And I have to say that since I've come into the role, this is the one area where I get the most contact from elected members and from tenants themselves, is around the quality and the responsiveness of our services. And it's often about complaints about misdiagnosis of repairs or not getting it right first time. And working with officers over the last number of months, there's been a consistent drive through the contract management that the officers have actually been undertaking to actually emphasize and embed into the minds of our contractors. Actually, we do need to get it right first time. We are often dealing with vulnerable people, and we need to make sure that, for example, stuff like that, if they're going to go out to a job, they carry in the right stock on the van, etc., stuff like that. Also, the diagnosis of the repairs, that's getting better, where basically whether it be the customer service centre or whether it be the actual surveyors who we've employed, who go out to the properties and doing it quick and efficiently as well. And where we can't do things, where it's more complicated and we need a little bit more time, we're being a lot more open and honest with the actual tenants and saying, actually, we need to do X, Y, and Z, and we need to go back and think about what we're actually going to do to give you a better end product and result on that particular repair. So that might be, for example, somebody who's got a problem with the bathroom, and maybe the surveyor goes out and determines actually your mobility, the person's mobility is maybe not great, etc. Going back to the said officers and saying, actually, they probably be better off with an adaptation rather than just doing the same old same, etc. And that's just a real simple example of what is actually proactively happening now with the housing teams, etc. that we have. That's basically we're having more open and honest and transparent discussions with all of our contractors, etc. And where things aren't working, we're actually dealing with it and trying to put it right, etc. And we are seeing that, because I am seeing less and hearing less complaints coming through on those sorts of issues. But we can't be complacent. There's a long way to go, and we're completely committed to moving that forward. And as we move forward, the conversation I've been having with officers is looking at opportunities when it comes around to procuring our new contracts and how they might look like, and looking at the new models of delivery that there are out there in the market. We don't have to always look at the same old same, client contractor relationship. There's different ways to procure services nowadays, and we'll look at that over the coming probably 18 months to 2 years. So moving things on, real exciting bit here, and I will promise me that I'll bring Craig in one last time in a minute, but I just want to really say is that there is a real commitment that we are going to start looking at developing and building new properties, new homes for our tenants. And some of that might be a little bit of purchasing properties that are already built, but we're hoping to do our own development program. And this is something that I've been really, really keen on, and think that we should do, because we need homes. We need stuff like 1 and 2 bed properties. We need small family homes as well, 3-bed properties. And sometimes to make it affordable for people, it's going to have to be either ourselves as the local authority or a registered social landlord that delivers it. The private sector is going to be out of reach of people. And if we look at what's in the media over the last number of months inside housing, if you look at what the party conferences have said, is I think there's a big recognition that basically there is going to have to be a social housing programme that's delivered. So when we sell a right to buy property, we actually replace it like for like if we can do that. So Craig, do you just want to come in and just explain exactly, so it's sort of really hot off the press, what's actually going to be coming in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, absolutely. So pleased to announce that obviously we had our housing development manager, Tahir Majid, started with us on the 1st of September this year. Tahir's got a great wealth of experience of delivery of new build projects and kind of social housing projects in local authority. He's in the process at present of developing a housing development strategy, which will be with members for consultation in the next week or two. That will outline how and why we will be kind of delivering the projects, and also trying to provide a bit of a framework for delivery, looking at what sort of types of sites we want to develop. We've got quite a lot of opportunity within our own portfolio around kind of garage sites, around certain parcels of land that are kind of accompanying some of our existing developments. And I think we've got a real opportunity to be quite innovative with some of those solutions. Following that, we'll pull together a development plan. We already have about 15 sites that we know are ripe for kind of development for kind of 2, 3, 4 property developments. And we'll be exploring every opportunity to kind of look at new build technologies, whether that's modular builds or kind of off-site development and build, to kind of reinvigorating old garage areas or garage sites underneath existing blocks that are void. So we just need to ensure that we're looking at aspirational properties. We're not hopefully going to be delivering just the kind of standard affordable housing that can be easily identified. We want to deliver aspirational properties for people to kind of really want to live in, look after, and also be proud of, because ultimately that's part of our legacy that we will be passing down. We're not just here managing the stock. We're gatekeepers of probably the most important asset that Melton Borough Council have, and we want to make sure that we pass that on in the best way, and also have properties that stand out from kind of the norm and something that people can be proud of. So properties that are energy efficient, that are cutting edge, that are technologically advanced, and not just the standard kind of 2-bedroom brick house that maybe a lot of people kind of linked to affordable housing. So that's kind of the aspiration. Members will have that document very shortly with regards to the strategy, and moving forward from then we'll have the development plan. The government's announcement earlier this year, kind of providing an extra 2 years leeway with regards to spending right to buy receipts, has allowed us to kind of pull back a little bit, move away from kind of purchasing properties from developers, and enabled us to kickstart the opportunity to deliver our own new build developments. So Tahir, as I said, has experience of delivering 150 properties in the last 4 years for a nearby local authority, and that's from everything from new build to modular to kind of garage development. So, you know, really exciting time.
And just we'll just come to conclude things, so we'll move on to the final slide there, please. So looking really at next steps of what we're going to try and achieve, and what our plans really are, is that once stock condition data is in, we're hopefully going to build a robust housing revenue account business plan, so that we know where we're going to invest, where we need to invest, and hopefully have some of those aspirational plans in there as well. We'll have robust stock condition data, hopefully. It'll be in the system, and the one thing is we just need to make sure that we don't get back to where we ended up, where we've procured systems in the past and we've ended up with them going to one side and not actually being updated, etc. Because at the end of the day, this is tenants' money, and we shouldn't be having to spend it 3 and 4 times to get it right. It should be spent once, and that should be on the minds of all the officers, etc. Which I know it is now. That, you know, the way you build your business plans, etc., is only as good as the data that you have within the system, because you can't just put your finger in the air and say, oh, I think we should be doing this, because sooner or later you're going to get it wrong. Sustainability of council housing long term, that's what that will basically create. Is we need it to be more sustainable. We need to know where direction the travel is, and if we need investment or borrowing, we need to know where that needs to be, etc. The next area is around policy development. And what we mean by that here is that if we need policies around stuff like, which we haven't developed, around tenant engagement, antisocial behaviour, how we collect rent, how we take people to court, etc. Some of that work's already started, but we need it there because, for example, if we take somebody to court, they should have a right to know what process we're following, and they should know and they should be able to challenge that, for example. But also as well, they should know what it means if those, for example, reporting a repair, they should know how long it takes. It should be written down, etc. It shouldn't just be in the minds of officers, etc. It should be made publicly available, and that's just going to become more and more of a requirement for local authorities and housing associations, because as the white paper will do, is they're going to make sure that we're going to have to be a lot more transparent, and rightly so. Regulatory compliance, this is the one thing is that we must keep on top of, is we must keep our tenants safe, and we must keep on top of our contractors to ensure they're safe. We must make sure if we have resource issues, that actually we will have to drop other things, and we'll have to make sure that health and safety comes first. It's just, that is just the way it's going to be. The next area that we're looking at is, which I talked a little bit about earlier, which is enabling the voice of the tenant. And I don't mean just by let's go and see what they have to say. Actually, it's about how we might embed them into such things as we might invite them into stuff like Scrutiny to come in and present to you, or say, how the feel of service is progressing, or maybe how it's not. Maybe help us reshape and look at redelivery of different services. I'm open to that. I think that's the way it should be. That's what some of the good providers are doing up and down the country. Why shouldn't Melton do that? I'll leave the next one to the end, actually, and then I'll move on to continue to grow and nurture the team. We have a new, if you were here, for those who were here last week, we had, I think it's 5 new housing officers and a team leader come to meet us. And that means that for the first time, we actually, and even when I was here previously, we never had this, is for the first time, it's going to be area officers that will cover certain areas. So there's an officer dedicated to the town centre, to the rural villages, etc. So that means as members, you have a point of contact, tenants have a point of contact to deal with those tenancy management issues. And we're not wondering who to go to. And they may not be able to solve the problem, but what they'll do is they'll say, here's the person to go to, and point you in the right direction and build up that relationship with not only yourselves, but more importantly, our tenants. And really, we want to provide the best services that we possibly can with the resources that we have. And we'll continually challenge, and I expect all of you to challenge me, and then we can then robustly challenge each other as to what we can and can't achieve. And then finally, I'm going to go back up to, it's about celebrating successes. I think over the last 18 months, it's been challenging for the sector. It's been Melton, I didn't think probably would get this far in how it's improved. We've got a lot to do. There's still a lot of gaps there. But I do think we need to reflect like we did last week and just say, we've moved it on to this level, celebrate the success, recap, and then move it on to the next level. And that's what I want to continually do, is to continually do that there. And we'll have some challenges, we'll have some disagreements along the way, but as long as we know what that end vision is, we should hopefully get there. And we just need to focus on, really, it's all about the tenant. And if we do that, I think we will make some progress. So that's the end of the presentation. So I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, and be assisted by Craig and Michelle.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks very much to the two of you for the presentation. And yeah, as Ronan says, comments, questions. Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, the tenancy handbook, just remind me, has that gone out to tenants or not? Is it imminent?
Yeah, it's already out with them, and it's published, I believe, Craig. Yeah.
Yeah, we're just in the process of making it easily accessible on the internet, because obviously it's a PDF document at present, so we're just doing some work on that. But we've got them available. All new tenants are receiving them at sign up, and the housing officers have got them with them all the time. And I believe that we've also pigeonholed a copy for every one of the councillors. So it just provides that consistency of approach and that consistency of understanding the tenant's responsibility and also the landlord's responsibility. So yes, they are available.
And looking at the budget booklet, on page 28, the capital programme. Now, Melton's consistently, as you pointed out, Craig, over the last few years, say half a dozen years, underspent drastically on the capital programme. Works haven't been done for various reasons. You've got just over 4 million in the current year. I know you're not going to be here, so could I maybe pose this question to the director? Are you confident with all the staff changes that we won't be underspending again this year? Because we've got important work, kitchens, central heating, doors, windows, rewiring, etc. There's a lot of changes. Are we going to be spending the budget?
Okay, so I can give you an update in terms of the staffing side of it, and then I'm going to ask Craig to come to the budget, if that's okay. In terms of any staffing changes, the assurance that I can give you as members is we will make sure we build on the progress that's already been made. Any changes in our staffing, although it's something that we have to manage and deal with, we will make sure does not take our eye off the progress and the momentum that we've gained so far. So we've got a period of handover with new staff that are coming in. We've got some expertise to support us throughout the whole process. process, and we'll make sure that we continue that irrespective of any changes. So that's the assurance I can give you, and we're putting everything in place to manage that. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask Craig to answer the budget question, because it shouldn't matter who we have in post in terms of delivering on that. So over to you, Craig.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. So from a capital programme point of view this year, we're probably not going to exhaust that whole budget, because we were waiting for some of the data to come in, and I think everybody can probably agree with me that we need to make data-led decisions. We have invested heavily with regards to kitchens and bathrooms in the properties that have become vacant that we know needed them. So they've been at a higher level than we anticipated from the data that we had historically. So our reported data shows that our stock decency sits at somewhere in the region of 78.2%, with the properties that are coming through our void process, that they're looking at about 65% decency at present. So we're having to put a lot more capital expenditure in at that point at present, but hopefully that will reduce once we get that programme of works built up on the back of the data that we're receiving at the end of this month. We also need to understand kind of the operating environment we're in at present. Contractors are struggling to kind of source some materials, so we're having to be very kind of proactive in prioritising some of our works. But I think my last projection is that we'll probably satisfy somewhere in the region of about 66% of the capital programme this year with regards to expenditure. But that just also depends on how much we can mobilise between January the 1st and the end of March this year. So that's kind of the key question realistically. And obviously the other unknown is obviously the impact of COVID on top of that. But I think the one thing that I would provide assurance on is we have procured the contracts that we need to deliver those capital programs moving forward. So we won't be kind of victims of that massive hiking in prices in reaction to the current climate. The prices will increase because obviously we have to meet that supply and demand, and they will be market led, but there are controls within those contracts. And also just to provide a little bit of assurance around contract management, all of the contracts that we've procured have a very consistent suite of contract management documents alongside them. So we've developed a suite of contract management documents that sit across all of our planned maintenance contracts, so that anybody that can manage one contract knows the contract management documentation that can be applied to any contract that we've procured, which I think is a real step in the right direction from a consistency point of view, and also enables that kind of procedural handover in a much slicker way than at present.
Just one final point then, if your spending is going to be fairly well underway for kitchens and bathrooms, could you consider a budget environment from one heading which isn't going to get spent into more work on the kitchens and bathrooms?
Absolutely, and that's something that we look at on a month-by-month basis anyway. I think I would much rather delay a couple of months rather than just keep throwing money in, and understand where those decisions need to be made and where the properties need to have that work done from a data point of view. The other benefit that gives us is I would much rather go in and renew a kitchen and a bathroom with a tenant in situ, because we have 4 design choices that the tenants have been consulted on. I want the tenant to own the kitchen, because if they own it, they choose it, they're going to look after it, it's going to last longer. So I'd rather that we do that with the tenant in situ and do that work in partnership with them than move them in and have them kind of inherit a kitchen that they maybe wouldn't have chosen and not look after it in a proactive manner. So there is a bit of a double-edged sword realistically, but I think the underlying principles of making data-led decisions and giving the tenant the choice so that they are empowered to look after that property is the correct way to do it. It's very much the kind of the sector best practice, and that's the position that you're going to be in once you receive all of that data in the very near future.
If I could just make a comment, I won't be long. I'm glad you mentioned TFEC. And I know that I hope it's a bigger organisation now. That's excellent. I think they were very, very helpful when we were looking into the voids problems, and sort of connected. There's always been loads of complaints about housing. Are you on top of those complaints now?
Yeah, we are on top of the complaints. We do. I have regular discussions about all complaints with Craig. Have those also starting the conversation with Michelle, etc. Also, what we have to remember, to do, and this is a further conversation we need to have, is about how, as a portfolio, I want to see how we can encourage more people to actually make complaints if they feel there's a complaint that needs to be made, so that we actually learn from that. From the volume of complaints coming through, from what I've seen, is I think they're low for a social landlord, especially after coming through the pandemic, etc. But obviously the right type of complaints, so that actually, if it we learn from it, we listen to the tenant, and we move forward there, basically. But Craig, you might want to say a little bit more on that.
Yeah, probably not specifically in relation to complaints, but one thing just for awareness of scrutiny is that we have, last week we did send out via an external company called Acuity a very comprehensive tenant survey to understand both how we're performing, but also how the tenant feels about the property that they live in. That will provide us with a baseline of our performance, and will also give us that opportunity to identify things that we can do better. And the plan would be then that you would revisit that survey in another 18 months' time to again measure your improvements or measure your position again moving forwards. So we need to enable the voice of the tenant, and I'm very much of the opinion that we do need to have those kind of service improvement groups where we have tenants engaged to help us shape the service. Nobody knows what we do better, what we do well and what we don't do very well than the customers that we serve. And that's what we need to make sure that we enable that voice so we can hear it and learn from it.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, there's been a lot of change recently within the housing department. We've lost the lead officer, we've lost the lead portfolio holder. I think even Ronan would admit I was always kind to the lead officer and the lead portfolio holder, and I know this must be a very difficult time for you as lead portfolio to pick up the pieces and run with it. And I think you're doing an exceptional job, and I mean that. You are doing an exceptional job to keep the ship steady, considering a lot of your officers have left to South Kesteven, should we say, and the lead portfolio holder has gone to Australia. I'm still waiting for him to give me an offer to go to Australia, but it hasn't come so far, unfortunately. Now, on a serious note, I know one of the things that worried you considerably is the gas installations and the fact that you were really behind with that. And the other thing I just wondered about is this inspection frequency. I've been through this debate, it just shows my age, and there was a big debate in Rushcliffe about this at one stage. The problem with outsourcing it, which looks a good idea, is that the argument some officers had, it means that the in-house knowledge of the stock, because they're not visiting the stock and seeing it as officers, is lost. So, you know, obviously when an officer goes around to these houses and sees it, they take with them not only the report, but they also have the eyes and ears to see what's going on around the property. Whereas you get it, I know you're now getting it as an outsourced report. And there was a big debate in Rushcliffe as to what was the best way, losing that knowledge, in-house knowledge of the stock. So if someone phoned up and said, this has gone wrong or whatever, and that the officers who answered that phone or were dealing with that complaint didn't know the property because they hadn't been to it for 5 years or something. I know there was a big debate and it split completely against the politics. It was just across the whole officers and councillors. No one quite knew whether that was a good policy or not. And I just wonder how that sort of worries you or doesn't worry. Thank you.
Yeah, it does. We'll answer this together. I'll answer the first bit is when we first came in and recognised at the start of this new council, one of the first things I raised with the leader was the lack of staff in the housing department, which he agreed with, and we did, and they went and done something about that. Is that you've got a good property team now of established staff, and we just need to keep that momentum going, etc. And they go out and they visit the properties regularly, whether that be voids officers, whether that be surveyors for capital programs or plan works, etc. And then also the most important thing is your eyes and ears out there in the homes, and that's your housing officers or your tenancy management officers. And we now have a team of that, and that makes me a lot more reassured than I would have been if we hadn't have got that, because at one stage we didn't have any housing officers here. So you can never be 100% reassured, but probably put it to 90% reassured, because if anybody says to 100%, you're not, there's always going to be something that slips through the gaps. But from my view as a portfolio holder, that's my answer. But I will just ask Craig to come in, because he probably has some more on the technical side of things.
Okay, yeah. So from a stock condition data point of view, because the actual the way that that's compiled and the way that's pulled together is quite a specialist arena of work. So we went out to do that with an external contractor, but we wanted to make sure that we had the capability to interrogate that data and also understand the data and store it and keep it up to date. So with that in mind, I think sector best practice is that you get people, you outsource the actual decent homes inspections or the HHSRS kind of elements, kind of your health and safety ratings, but you then also ensure that you have the in-house expertise to be able to monitor that, deliver the capital programs, and then also, we're not going out to the properties. So, we are still post-inspecting works from our contractors. We are still going out there and kind of dealing with that kind of first point of contact with the tenants. So I think that that's kind of the approach that we've taken, but it's very, very important just to ensure that we had data that we knew that we could rely on. So that's why we've done what we've done now. And I think the most important thing to do moving forward is to ensure that you have that rolling program of 4-year inspection, so that then you can continue to evolve and continuously improve that decency within the stock. The other aspect of that is that it's not just about the fabric of the building and the actual home that we're looking at. The contract that we've procured will also look at the condition and data around our garage sites, around our kind of health and safety kind of hotspots to a certain extent, around our kind of elevated walkways and our kind of our communal areas too. So we need to ensure that we have that robust data to ensure that we make data-led decisions. That being said, we also need to understand how those properties are to live in. So that's where we have to ensure that our tenancy team are working with our assets team. And I think that that's one of the key wins and key factors around the way that the team are working now. We haven't got those silos of individual teams having their own kind of very focused responsibility. It's about everybody sharing that information and working together.
Thank you. Yeah, Jeannie, please.
Thank you, Chair. Speaking as a...
And can I just say, no more comments after that?
Speaking as a town councillor, a town centre councillor, I'm really interested in the new build developments, the plans for that. And I'm just wondering where we are as regards the timeline, as regards these. I mean, we've seen some wonderful plans coming forwards regarding eco-friendly developments, embracing new technology, and the pre-built modules, the block housing that look kind of like prefabricated, but very much with a modern twist, very futuristic. Anyway, everybody's very excited about this. I've had a lot of town residents approach me saying we need more houses, really like to rent from the council. So whatever's happened in the past, it doesn't matter to them. They want council houses, and that's really good news for us, I think. I know we've had a bumpy ride in the past, but I think our council's always addressed our past problems, and it's done very well within the confines of finances and resources available. So people out there really are really positive about our council houses. So where are we exactly? I know we've seen a lot of plans, pictures of like the garages being changed to housing, wonderful things. But where are we exactly? What's the timeline, and when can we expect to hear news on that side? Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I'll come back on that, councillor. So realistically, with the extension to the right to buy spend deadlines, we had 2 years to the 1st of April so 2 years from the 1st of April this year to spend the next tranche of kind of right to buy receipts. That's somewhere in the region, I believe, £225,000. So realistically, the development, we need to start producing some properties and completions on properties by the 1st of April 2023. That's why I've put such a short timescale on kind of developing the development strategy and also drawing up the development plan. That being said, £220,000 in the first instance isn't going to kind of get you a lot of property, but we need to match that with some of our kind of HRA capital reserves to ensure that we can build the properties. Realistically, I think that we'll be looking at generating 7 to 10 properties per year for use within the HRA. But that's not to say that we won't do larger scale developments, but only keep that kind of 7 to 10 properties within the HRA. But we could also partner with other people to deliver more. Realistically, I think that the town centre is the easy win, because the rural areas are very difficult in a way to sometimes develop in, and also we probably don't have as much stock or as much land and opportunity out there. So I think some of your redundant garage sites, some of your flats with garages underneath are ripe for those sort of things. But we've also got some parcels of land that are really ripe. So we've got areas that are bordering car parks, for example, and those sort of things that we just need to ensure that we move upon quickly.
Jeannie. Can I just say, just in case we don't see Craig again, or if I don't, wishing you lots of luck for the future, and thanks for all you have done already for us. Thank you. Bye. Now we come to the Melton Community Lottery update, and I'm guessing, David, that you're here to help Aisha. Yeah, lovely. So Aisha, welcome to you, the Leisure, Culture and People Manager. And if you'd like to make a few introductory comments on the report, that will be helpful.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an update report to Scrutiny following agreement to undertake a review of the community lottery in relation to the ongoing impact, financial viability and value of the service. In summary, our findings from the review, which is reflected in the report, is that the lottery continues to provide a net benefit to the council, both in terms of helping to partially offset the community grants budget, but also directly supporting good causes that are registered through the site with their own supporters. The findings also show that discontinuing the lottery would not result in any savings to the council and will consequently stop the funds which contribute not just to the community grants pot, but also the funds which go directly to good causes through their own pages. To date, outside of what has contributed towards the community grants budget since the lottery was launched, upwards of 35,000 has been raised directly by good causes through their own pages. And therefore, this highlights the necessity of undertaking an equality impact assessment should a decision to cease the lottery be made due to the direct impact it would have on the beneficiaries of this scheme. And just finally, I just wanted to end on highlighting a real positive on two levels, and that is that Appendix B in the pack relates to a report from the marketing assistant, which was a fully funded post through the government's Kickstart scheme. Not only was this the first Kickstart that was recruited to in the East Midlands, we grabbed the opportunity as soon as that came up, but it's been overwhelmingly successful. A post that's gone from strength to strength since being recruited, which is demonstrated in the progress report at Appendix B. And that's, I'm happy to take any questions now.
Yeah, just to say that, just to tell you what Cabinet agreed when we took it to Cabinet, this problem, that efforts be made to increase participation within existing resources, and that officers undertake a review proportionate with the level of investment in the service and report the findings to Cabinet after 12 months, such that a decision can be made regarding the ongoing impact and value of the service. So we're not here this evening to make recommendations. We're here to make comments and ask questions about the service. But of course your comments and any other information will go to Cabinet, be part of a report, and go to Cabinet for them to give, to respond to us. So if there are any questions or comments, yeah, Mel.
Just an observation, really. I know during COVID, I keep saying that word, a lot of the local charities have really suffered. And I think you've done really well to increase the sales of the bid during this time, really. And I think, it has got the potential to move forward, hasn't it? Well, it seems that it's got the potential to move forward. I think you've done really well with it. Well done.
Yep, Chris.
Yeah, I just want to say as well that I've noticed it's, you can see over the last 6-8 months that it's been really well publicised. I've seen posters at the gym, there's signage on like the Biffa waste vehicles. I've seen it promoted on social media. You can see that a lot of effort's been put in to try and promote it and publicise it a lot more. So yeah, well done.
Thanks, Jeannie. And then Bob.
Yeah, can I just ask Aisha, this £25,000 prize, first prize, is there a £25,000? I've not seen anyone winning it or around in Leicestershire or nationally.
So the jackpot is 25,000. There has been, I think, a couple of, one definitely South Kesteven, I think it was, there has been a £25,000 winner. It's a lottery. The jackpot is 25,000. As with any lottery, it's not a forced issue. If
Now and again, not every week.
No, the jackpot has the potential to be won every week if people match the numbers, but no, it's not being won every week at all in Melton. Yeah. No.
Okay, I think what's confusing members, if they look at the budget book, is the 2019-20 financial year shows a net expenditure of only £1,000, but when we look at 2021 and the current year, all of a sudden that shoots up to around 25,000, which the ratepayers looking at that would think that is going to be chargeable against my rates. And then you read the report and it says that it implies that this is then moved by an accounting adjustment. And if the lottery were to be discontinued, then that 25,000 would then be allocated against other services, which probably are running at a loss anyway. So that's what's confusing members. Would somebody like to explain that?
Yeah, I'll come in here now if that's okay, Chair. So I think I've mentioned in the financial comments in the report as well that as Councillor Charles mentioned, there is accounting treatment whereby we move the support charges around. And I know the members of the committee have heard me talk about this before when this report's come up. And I think it was mentioned when the first time this topic was raised was that there is a change now whereby we only have to charge the support services against the high level priorities of the council. And what we'd look to do in this year's budget book was just to, on each of those pages, summarising the total cost for each priority, just to include one line to show the support charges that were being allocated against that priority. The reason for doing that was when we looked at some of the corporate services, such as finance, HR, legal, we were showing in the budget book as they were virtually nil cost to the council rather than the gross amount, which was probably a bit unreflective. And I think once Councillor Charles picked up, and I think I have mentioned this in the feedback to yourself, Chair, that was a bit of an oversight and an error in the production of the budget book, that those support charges for 2021 and 21-22 were included. If you looked at the other priority areas, those support charges had been removed, and it's just the one line on the summary page. So that is an oversight that we apologise for, which has led to a bit of confusion. that's about us trying to reflect the change in the accounting practices we're trying to approach and be transparent in another way by showing the true costs of some of the other services that were shown as zero. Hopefully.
So then when we come to next year's budget book, there will be no support costs against any service in the budget book. So it's consistent from left to right, if you like.
Yes, that'll be right. On those individual detail pages that we're referring to, County Child, those will all be excluding support, but the summary pages will have that in to reflect that the bottom line charge is consistent.
Can I just ask, David, where this procedure has sort of changed a little bit, is that now explained in the budget book? Because in the past, I was just going by, you know, sort of what was in there and how officers were expected to allocate money and charges, which doesn't sound like the way that we're doing things now.
Yeah, I think in the glossary of the budget book, there is a definition of what support charges are to try and explain that. I think we try to do as much as we can. I think it's about, obviously, then if people then start to ask us questions, we can explain a bit more if we do get inquiries from the public from when our budget book or information, any reporting is in the public domain. We try to explain that a little bit in terms of what that's to do with, but equally it is a bit of a, I suppose, in a weird accounting adjustment we do that we have to do, but doesn't always necessarily help the reader when they're looking at it, which we understand.
Thanks for that. Any more comments? Jeannie.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I really enjoyed reading the diary account, actually, of the marketing assistant. I found it absolutely fascinating and an interesting marketing trail, how they went about it. I felt it was unfortunate about the impact of COVID because I felt it confused the results that we would have had if COVID hadn't occurred, because obviously we've all been through a little bit of financial squeeze, a lot of changes financially for everybody concerned. So I think the marketing assistant did very well in the face of that. And what they've actually proven is that they can actually drive the sales up quite impressively, and I was surprised actually, and I have to confess at the beginning of this problem issue with the lottery, I wasn't overconfident at all about it, so I was impressed that the marketing assistant could actually drive up sales, increase the profit, bringing it back at 8.2 to the budget of 13 grand over a 4-month period as well. So I was really impressed, appealing to a different number of demographics as well, and promoting the different good causes, because I hadn't thought that promoting the good causes would actually attract people, you know, to buying the tickets. Of course it does, but you know, I hadn't really kind of thought about it that much. So all very good stuff. So obviously we need longer to let this run now and to see how it plays out. I just wondered if there was any chance of continuing the marketing assistant at all. Has that finished? Have they finished? Thank you.
It's a 6-month scheme, so it will finish in November. We're currently exploring options. She's obviously set us up towards the sort of a base on which hopefully we'll be able to carry on, but we are considering what options we have available to continue.
Yeah, I think my colleague here understood. It was saying that the performance over the 4-month period was £13,000 income. I understand the budget for the year is 13,000. Would I correct there? Yeah, you've not raised 13,000.
If I can just, yes, so bring it back in line with the 13 grand budget, which is a big difference. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Finance and the way Scrutiny looks at things. We all know that the council is heading towards difficult times financially, and that members and officers will need to be looking at every service that the council provides. I truly believe that the council is known to be a caring council, particularly anxious to protect the most vulnerable in our society. We know that Aisha and her officers have been at the forefront of supporting our most vulnerable residents during the pandemic. They've helped many of our most needy residents to cope and survive. But it appears that some of our services, however valuable, will be unable to continue or will need to be cut back. I hope that all members, including those in the Cabinet, will look hard at every non-essential service which MBC provides and weigh up the overall benefits compared with the costs which have to be borne by taxpayers, many of whom are struggling financially. A plus for the lottery is its contribution to the community grants. But let's just remember that community grants and the lottery, however worthy, are not actually essential services. But that doesn't mean to say that that's a reason that they should stop. I certainly hope that a lot of these things will continue, but I think that everything needs to be looked at, not just the lottery, not just that sort of thing, but everything which is not a mandatory thing. I think this council and members are going to have to think about. So anyway, I think that's the end of this. And you're not saying anything, Chris.
Does that surprise you, Chair? Sorry. No, I mean, I've commented on this and obviously there's been a turnaround. I think this is a watching brief. I mean, the essential thing is it value for money? Are we actually subsidising this community lottery or is it actually benefiting the charities? And that's always a balancing book. You've heard the stories about it was losing 9,000 a year effectively when you did the funds, when we investigated it. And that is always my concern. As long as we are not subsidising the community lottery and it's actually making its own money, as it were, I don't see it as an issue, but that must include staff costs because obviously it takes staff to do the job. And I trust the officers to tell us that we're not subsidising to get the money in because you say that would be wrong. Thank you.
You okay? Yeah. Okay, then we have a recommendation that the Scrutiny Committee notes the report and provides comments to Cabinet for them to consider. Do we need to vote on this? No, we don't need to vote on it. So I think everybody will be okay with that. So many thanks, Aisha and David, for your attendance and the information. And yeah, it's not been an easy time the last few weeks, but I think we've given a good go over. And rightly so. You know, I think we were right to question things, and our comments now will go to Cabinet. And many thanks again. Right, so now we move on.
I'll just fetch Rob.
I beg your pardon. Oh yes, Rob. If he hasn't gone home. And he wouldn't be the first that's been forgotten. You okay with that, Misha?
It's been worth the conversations over the last few days, hasn't it?
Thanks for coming back, Rob.
I was tempted, but
right. Item 8 on the agenda, Leicestershire Waste Strategy, and Albert is going to make a few introductory comments on the report.
Thank you, Chair.
Albert. Yeah.
Yeah, I also have hopefully a short presentation for you all to make the digestion of the report more palatable, if that's okay. So the report to committee today sets out a pathway detailing how the council could seek to meet the changing requirements of waste and environment legislation over the next 5 years. So I'll seek to set out the changing duties placed on both collection authorities such as Melton and also disposal authorities, which in our case is Leicestershire County Council, and what these changes may well mean for our residents and customers over that time period. The reports come to scrutiny as a mechanism for members to provide comment and overall direction on of travel, and also provide ongoing comment as we progress through the waste strategy development and reading of the legislation through Parliament as well. Next slide, please. I feel like Chris Whitty. Next slide, please. So just by way of introduction, the waste strategy is a document that's held by both collection authorities and disposal authorities across Leicestershire, which seeks to provide a plan for meeting the needs of the legislation and being realistic regarding what authorities are able to deliver. The existing waste strategy covers the period up to 2019 and was due to for a slightly earlier refresh. But as we know, the last 2 years have been slightly chaotic from that perspective. And the new strategy quite conveniently coincides with a national refresh of waste legislation and a new environment bill and waste management plan for England that's coming that may well come into effect next year. So the objectives of the two plans are twofold. One is to help the nation meet climate change and carbon dioxide emission objectives. So the first one of that is to have a zero carbon economy by the year 2050, and also to make it easier for residents to reduce and recycle their waste as well. And that's in line with an objective for 65% of all municipal waste to be recycled by the year 2035. So we're looking to compile a new strategy to set councils on the way to meeting that legislation over the next 10 years in the wider context of existing contracts and that new legislation. Next slide, please. So the waste strategy, as I just set out, will cover a period of at least 10 years. And it will cover everything that we undertake as a collection authority, from collection frequencies, methods, and the type of materials that we collect, through to the disposal options and how that material is disposed or recycled, including transport implications from our depots to ultimate disposal points as well. I'll cover environmental benefits, looking at enhancing a circular economy, so that's trying to throw less away and reuse as much as we can. Looking at affordability and sustainability over the next 5 to 10 years, and also ensuring that we retain flexibility of our services in order to meet the changing needs of our population and obviously legislation over the next 10 years also. Next slide. Just for a bit of lighter relief, hopefully, this is an inverted waste hierarchy. So you may well recognize from 15, 20 years ago that hierarchy looks slightly different in that it was upside down compared to how it is at the moment. So you had a standard triangle of which dispose was the largest element on that, going up to prevent, which was very much the smallest, the tip of the triangle. The aim of the new legislation and the new waste strategy is to have a first recourse for all our waste being to prevent it entering the waste stream in the first place, and to reduce it, reuse it, and obviously where we're coming in as a collection authority is more around the recycling element as well. Anything that we don't recycle, we'll look to recover, as opposed to sending off to landfill, where currently Leicestershire is very high in terms of the amount of waste it currently sends to landfill. So looking to invert the current pyramid into what we have on screen there. Next slide, please. So as I touched on earlier, the main legislative changes set out a number of different changes to the way residents and businesses and we as authorities, statutory authorities, deal and manage that waste. So there are three main implications to the council from this. There are further implications more widely for the population, but three specifically that I'll home in on today that have an impact on us, and that's the proposal potentially of free weekly food waste collections, the potential for free garden waste collections as well, and the potential for changes to the current commingled dry recycling collections, and looking to standardize them across the nation. These elements are here to make them ostensibly here to make recycling more acceptable and convenient for residents, while also enabling as much of the waste that's going into the general waste stream to be recycled as well. So additional factors such as deposit return schemes and requirements on packaging manufacturers are aiming to reduce the amount of waste that's put into the system as a whole. But as I say, we'll focus on those first three elements that I've set out there. Next slide, please. So the first one we'll focus on briefly is weekly food waste. So the driver on this is to reduce the amount of food waste, obviously, that's going into our general waste bins and therefore going to landfill. You may well be familiar with a number of areas that are currently operating weekly food collections. The only one in Leicestershire at the moment is a trial that's being operated by North West Leicestershire Council. And they're looking, and the potential legislation that's is due to go through Parliament sets out the fact that food waste collections should be weekly to reduce odour and obviously for customer convenience as well. But the benefit of doing that is obviously you take away the amount of food waste that's going into general waste, but also you make it very clear to customers how much food waste they're wasting. So usually after 6 to 12 months, the amount of waste that you can take out of the general waste bin for food waste actually reduces to a fairly minimal amount. If we were to implement this within Melton, we'd be looking at around three additional rounds of collecting. And there are a number of ways that we can potentially do that, either alongside existing collections or as a standalone collection on itself. This is likely to be the most likely of the proposed changes to pass through Parliament and be implemented. The current timescale is for a 2023 to 24 implementation, but and it remains to be seen whether that will be maintained by government due to the requirements that will be placed on such a wide number of councils in order to procure vehicles, teams, and receptacles in order for those collections to occur. Next food, please. Next slide, please. Free garden waste is another one that is being proposed by government. So this is a service that's currently available to every resident across the borough. We're in the upper quartile of cost per bin per year, around £75 per bin. And the mechanism within our waste contract ensures that we receive a fixed income currently that does go slightly every year. And that this year it's £190,000 regardless of the number of subscriptions to the Green Waste Club through BIFA. So the scheme is entirely run and operated through BIFA as the contract sort of sets out. But government is looking to standardise those collections across the board. So where you're going from one borough to another or one district to another. Currently, and some have chargeable, some have free collections. The government is looking to standardise those as an entirely free service. The theory behind this is that there's large amounts of garden waste that are going into the general waste bin, and the more available that you can make that scheme, the more tonnage you're likely to take out of the general waste bin and therefore out of landfill. We currently have around 10,000 subscribers, but obviously a free service would need to be offered to all 25,000 properties across the borough, and we'd be looking at again a growth of around 2 rounds, that's a team and vehicles to ensure coverage. Because of the income implications for a large number of councils across the country, it's my view and a locally held view that this is one of the least likely proposals to go through by government, purely because of the number of authorities that rely on that income that's coming in currently. Next slide, please. The third implication for potential implication for the council is the aim of the government to standardise recycling collections nationally, and which will in turn ensure that there's less differentiation from borough to borough or area to area between collection areas. So customers, as they move around the country, would know exactly what's going in the bin at any one time. An additional aim of this is to improve the quality of materials as well. So where we have a commingled collection at the moment, that has an impact because it's all going into the same bin, into the same compaction vehicle. We are losing some of the quality of the materials as glass goes in with paper and cans as well. So if the theory is if you separate those waste streams out, then the end reception point, the company you're handing those materials to, will provide additional income or extra income as a result of the improved quality. So if we were to go down this route, we would need to split out a number of the materials in our currently commingled collections. We're not sure exactly how the government is going to finalise these plans in terms of what materials should be specifically separated out, but it is likely to impact upon us from a perspective of having additional collections of additional receptacles, so potentially a glass bin, a paper box potentially, and obviously the separated collections that come from that, and the requirement for vehicles and men and teams, sorry, to undertake those collections. An additional complication around this is the existing contract that Leicestershire County Council as the disposal authority have with Caseback, which could cause difficulties in terms of implementing a new contract with that either existing provider Caseback or a separate new provider. Next slide, please. This is broadly an overview of the potential costs that may be incurred by the council as a result of these changes. Now, it's very broad. It's a fairly non-scientific scientific look at the potential costs to be incurred, and these will be managed further and dialed down, dug deeper down into throughout the production of the waste strategy, which is currently looking at modelling of potential collections across the county. As you can see, it's a significant additional burden to be borne by the council's budgets, but all signs currently are pointing to the government implementing new burdens funding, which will provide initial funding for the rollout of new schemes and ongoing year on year revenue income as well. That is yet to be confirmed, and the bill is due to go through its third reading in Parliament in the next couple of weeks. That will further set out the government's intentions on this, but it's certainly the noises coming out of government currently are that new burdens funding will cover the cost in its entirety of these new schemes. In terms of what we currently have noted in the medium-term financial strategy is £150,000 that's slated for a food waste trial, but the usage of that or the call on that depends on the government support over the coming years. And so we come on to the final slide, I think, around timescales. So it just sets out broadly the way both the waste strategy and the new legislation interplays with each other over the next 6 to 8 months. So the new legislation, the requirements are set for the third reading of the Environment Bill this month. The options appraisal and the modelling that will take into account the new legislative requirements as part of the waste strategy will be finalised late October, early November 21. And we'll be looking to put those proposals in front of Cabinet as an options appraisal for the consultation to begin in December and January of December 21 and January 22. We'll look to finalise the waste strategy towards the end of this financial year, hopefully just in advance of the Environment Bill receiving royal assent in early 22-23, which will hopefully then be followed by guidance relating from the government relating to how these schemes and the new duties should be implemented. So that broadly sets out where we are at the pathway over the next 6 to 8 months. And that's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much, Albert. I'm just wondering whether we can zoom through the pages rather than sort of us all dodging about, if that's okay. Going right back to the second, I think the second slide, the waste strategy. This one, yeah. I have a concern. You know, I'm very keen on recycling, but sometimes I just don't know what to do with stuff. I use loads of printing cartridges, and I understand that they have a value, but all I can do with is put them in the in with the landfill, you know. And I really think we perhaps could try harder to make sure that stuff that really has a value doesn't end up in landfill. So that's my concern on that slide.
Sorry, Jay, if I come in just to comment on that.
I beg your pardon, sorry.
Is that okay if I come in on that point? Is that right? You just made?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, just from the perspective of fairly niche products like printing cartridges, that part of the additional legislation changes are aiming to put more responsibility back on those producers to accept those materials back. So although it may not come into door-to-door collections that we're dealing with, there will be additional incentives for customers to return those items to the producers that produce them in the first place, and that should be incentivized as part of this legislation.
Actually, I think that you remind me now. I think, yeah, I've read that somewhere, and it is possible. You can even get envelopes to send them back with. But it's a shame because I do think an awful lot of stuff is ending up in the black bins, you know, when it needn't. Yeah. Weekly food waste. Any thoughts on that? Yeah, Chris.
Just, I mean, I see that you've got down a trial and all the rest of it within Melton, I presume. There are plenty of people who are already doing food trials all over the place. And I mean, my stepson lives in Bristol. There's plenty of people. I don't quite understand why we need a trial. It's been used. I mean, the one thing the government is saying is absolutely right. And it really irritates me to a certain extent. You move council, you suddenly have a completely different new regime of what you have to do, what you can put in the bin, what you can't put in the bin. It staggers me that we haven't got to a stage where wherever you are in this country, you know what the rules are. And the government is absolutely right. If it's going to thrust this home now, which is wherever you are, you have bins that can be do this and do that. And Bristol, I can tell you, don't listen. They're streets ahead of us, Their recycling rates are better. They've got great tips which sort out far more than we do. And, you know, they have collections for everything. So the mix is not what it is here, because the trouble is I've been to the sorting plant, and this isn't Melton's fault, this is Leicestershire's fault. The sorting plant is having to sort God knows what from God knows what, and it's not doing a great job. And it's not surprising when it ends up in Turkey or wherever it's ending up, most of it. I mean, this is what really, really frightens me, is where is our waste really going once it's been sorted? And I have tried desperately hard to get the facts from Leicestershire. I know 80%, I think it was going to Turkey, well renowned for their waste recycling, I can assure you. And you've seen, everybody's seen on the BBC, all that seems to be happening to a lot of it is just dumped. You know, we really need to get not only our act together here, but thank God we are starting to, once again in Bristol, recycle the plastic at source here and not keep sending it. It's not just the household collection, it's also what we do with it when we've done it, and not dumping our waste, which is what we've been doing for the last 5 to 10 years on other countries, whether it's India, Thailand, Turkey, or whatever. We need to deal with the problem here. And that's what the government, if they want this to be a real solution, it has to be from A to Z, not just sort it out and then dump it to another country to deal with.
Yeah, yes, please, Albert.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think there are some very, very pertinent points there, Councillor. I think one of the aims of the waste strategy is to provide that oversight regarding endpoint destinations of waste. I think it's often a myth that that waste that we put in our recycling bin ends up in a landfill in a faraway country. However, the material may well end up somewhere else. Usually that's because there's no end market for it here, or no reprocessors in Britain to reprocess that. Now, it is something that Leicestershire County Council are aware of, and part of the aims of the waste strategy will be to make that A, more transparent so people can see, and B, to wherever possible reduce that carbon footprint of having to send something abroad. Just on your first point around the food waste trial, we had a working group just earlier last week to sort of set out a way forward on this agenda, a number of officers, and I think it was generally agreed that food waste, the money that had been put in the MTFS for the food waste trial, was something that we foresaw a number of years ago, not knowing exactly how this legislation would look when it came about. So it is likely that should we go down the weekly food waste collections, then we would just, with that new burdens funding, the promised new burdens funding, we'd implement it straight away without the need for a trial. But yeah, we'd have to see exactly what the government's requirements are on that.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I just add to Albert? Could I just apologise beyond belief for my phone ringing? I did set it on no sound and all the rest of it. I just want to apologise to everybody here. I don't know how it happened. Technology, I'm just useless. Sorry.
Jeannie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, this compulsory waste food collection, we've talked about it for a long time now, and I'm pleased to see that we're actually getting an experiment to have a look at it more thoroughly. I was actually really interested at the point at 5.5 where it says that tonnages flatline soon after implementation as households become acutely aware of how much food waste they're throwing out. So by the process of bringing in this food collection, it will reduce it in itself, because I know for one, I just try and keep as low as possible the food that I throw out. I look at the dates, sell by dates, eat by dates, and make sure I eat things in rotation, so there's hardly anything to be thrown out. But my concern is, if I was to throw out, look at my food at the end of the week that I've thrown out, there'd probably be a pile of chips, a few Brussels sprouts, and 2 carrots. And I know this has been a little bit cheeky, but I don't think people will have a lot to throw out. I think the amounts could get really quite small, and I really think that I would have problems with knowing what to do with these small amounts. So I've been really thinking about this. In my garden, I've got one of the Joannas that the council advised us to buy a few years ago. I think they're called Joannas. There's different names for these big tubs that you throw your grass cuttings in. You can actually put waste of food waste into those, but you do have to be a bit careful because it can smell, especially in summer. You need to put additives in to make sure it is dissolved and digested. It's a bit of an art, apparently. So I think this could be opened up a little bit more. It could be free if people use these Joannas or these. I don't know if anybody else off the top of my head knows anything about it, but it would save us a lot of money if we could look at how to handle the small amounts in this way. Okay, thank you.
I do know is, yeah, I know people who do put their food waste in with their green waste, and you can buy bags, you can buy compostable bags to put the food into, and the foods, I understand, the food rots down before the bag rots down somehow or other. So, but you're right. I really wonder. I have hardly any food waste, you know, and I would imagine lots of people living alone don't have much. You know, it seems weekly collections, I would think, be collecting or from bins that haven't got much in. I don't know. Albert, do you know about that?
I think, well, in a way, excuse me, in a way, that's one of the aims of introducing the collections, because it makes people very aware of how much they're throwing out, and ultimately, as the inverted pyramid showed, we're looking to reduce as much as possible the amount of waste that people are throwing out in the first place. If we can reduce it at source, then so the better. However, that certainly doesn't take away from the fact that logistically that offers us problems with launching a service with a certain number of rounds and then not having the yields later on to justify that, and having to have a very flexible service alongside it. So it's something that we're watching and analysing keenly, sort of tonnage data from other areas that are operating schemes like this, just so that we can come into this prepared, and we don't over resource where in 6 months' time we may not need it. Regarding composting, I think a lot of people are home composting, and unfortunately that just hasn't taken off the way it potentially could have done, and therefore door-to-door collections is inevitably going to be the next best thing. It would be far better if everyone composted everything that they produce. However, that becomes difficult when you're looking at cooked food and meats and stuff like that. So I think we have to. There's been a very a checkered past in terms of authorities being able to ensure that people are composting as much as possible, and that's why ultimately the government is looking at door-to-door collections, as it's far more accessible for everyone.
Albert, perhaps you can help me with this? I do understand that tea bags, I heard recently, actually have plastic they're not just paper, they're paper with plastic. Should we be putting that? I don't know what we should be doing with tea bags.
Honest answer, Chair, I don't know. I think that would have to be determined through whatever the acceptance criteria is for whatever disposal point Leicestershire County Council send us to. So I would imagine that food waste, I mean, certainly in other food waste collections that are happening nationally, tea bags are accepted in those. How exactly that gets around the plastic, I don't know. And that's something that as we go through the process, I'm sure we'll find out.
Thanks for that. Yeah, we're going to have to learn, I think, about lots of things, aren't we? Still, Chris?
Very quick answer to that. It depends on the company. Some are plastic mesh tea bags, some aren't. So if you look, you can find out. And the high quality ones, of course, tend not to have plastic in them. Could I just ask one quick question? It is a very quick question, because I've seen it on Facebook when it was up. Why is it Biffa's cost for the green waste collection is being undermined by another company within Melton by a significant margin per household? Because I've seen this, it's gone around Facebook that they're saying, don't go with Biffa because they charge this much. You go with this firm who collect in Melton and it's half the price.
the reason that that's there, I suppose, councillor, is because it's a free market, and so if someone sees a gap in the market, or are able to undercut the existing price of the scheme that we're contracted to, then they're able to do that. It's not something that yeah, we ultimately we would prefer for the materials to be going through BIFA as part of our waste contract, our collection contract with them, and then that then has the way through to disposal points through Leicestershire County Council. But yeah, ultimately it's a free market, and if a company can offer a cheaper service to residents and residents wish to take that up, then they can do. I know that BIFA have been matching those prices of late. Whether that's still happening, I don't know, but it's certainly something that's on BIFA's radar as well.
Yes, it's garden waste. I've heard of that, and it is a significant difference. It's not much more than half, if I remember, and yeah, and I think it's a bit sort of I don't like it if people phone up BIFA and say they're leaving BIFA. BIFA agrees that they'll pay, that they can pay the lower rate, which I think is not fair, you know, because I think we should be able to trust a company like BIFA. But yeah, I know at the moment, of course, it is just in the town they're doing it, but no, that it's a national company, and I understand that they're expecting to do once they've got a toehold here, that they'll be spreading out to the villages. But I've even knew somebody who lives in a village and phoned BIFA and said that they were going to leave, and they too were offered a cheaper rate, you know. So it's I don't know, I think it's a bit unfair, but it is such an enormous difference. You know, it really is. And to me, I think grasses and stuff like that I just thought it was an asset. You know, it's something you could do something with, you know, but rather than having to pay. Yeah, Mel.
Sorry, there's a couple of things here. I think if you probably segregate the meat from the vegetables and put the vegetables in your grass bin, that lot could go to a biodigester anyway. So you wouldn't, you know, which is recycling it. I assume somewhere in here, because there seems to be a lot of people think that we ship all of our rubbish abroad. I think it was about 20 years ago, they brought out the packaging waste regulations, where you became responsible as a producer or a wholesaler or a merchant for the weight, dependent on where you were in that chain, manufacturing or end sale, where you became responsible for the percentage of packaging that you produce, whether it be wood, plastic, steel, metal, or anything else. I assume that's still ongoing. So there must be a lot of people, in fact, most of our industries and Sainsbury's, you know, end sellers of these products, that must be paying an awesome amount of money somewhere to have this lot recycled. So where is that money going? Do we know? Because if all they're doing is shipping it to Turkey, as Councillor Evans suggests, which I doubt, to be fair, then why are these companies paying to have this lot recycled? And they do have to pay a lot of money for it, and the bar's set very low for you to actually come under these regulations.
So sorry, Councillor. So yeah, those packaging regulations are still in place, and ultimately they are going to be doubled down on as part of the new waste management plan that will put additional requirements on packaging producers to ensure that they're reducing those waste arisings, and where possible accepting those materials back. As soon as that goes into the household, though, that becomes municipal waste effectively. So the duty on the producer ends at that point and becomes the duty of the local government to and the collection and disposal authorities to dispose of that effectively. So in answer to your question about where all that money for recycling is going, I don't know. That'll be something for the Leicestershire County Council to I'm sure to answer. But in terms of the end product, where the income for the end product comes in, that does go into the county council, and we used to get an element of that through recycling credits. So if I don't know, the paper that we produce goes through to to individual to a manufacturer. They provide out Leicestershire County Council with income they used to come through to the borough councils as recycling credits.
Quickly, is there an opportunity for us to send the grass and vegetables and stuff to a bio? Do we have a biodigester anywhere? I think we do, don't we? Have we? Okay.
in the borough, yeah.
Yeah,
I was
all
just
in the
going to
borough.
bring that up.
Okay, over to you. Sorry.
You've not mentioned anaerobic digesters. They're all over the borough now. We should be putting food waste into those. I mean, Samworths have got a marvellous scheme on the A46 where all their waste pot pies and stuff go that don't go to the beaver hunt. I mean, it's a most interesting trip, I understand. I mean, the Farmers Union and people all go around and have seen this, and all food waste is goes back on the land, basically, where it should go. And it's a process that takes quite a long time. It's very costly, but there are some farmers now putting them in themselves who keep chickens and pigs. I mean, these pigs that have got to be culled, they'll all go in anaerobic digesters. That's the only thing you can do with them. I have got a question actually of clarity on. You said that the green waste, the income it derives, I thought the income went straight to the BIFA.
Yeah, so we receive a fixed income every year as part of the waste contract for them being able to manage that scheme in its entirety. So from the customer's perspective, that money will go to BIFA. So their annual subscription goes into BIFA, and they retain that. However, as part of one of the mechanisms in the contract, it was that we receive a slightly increasing annually, but the fairly fixed amount, regardless of the number of subscribers to that scheme. So it provides us with more financial stability than potentially otherwise, where we would be very reliant on retaining a certain number of baseline customers.
I've got 3 compost bins in the garden. I've got a medium-sized garden, perhaps a bit bigger than a medium size, I don't know. But I've got 3 compost bins, but I've also got a green waste bin, and I'm paying £75 a year for that. I think that's cheap. It's only £1.50 a week. What do you get for £1.50 a week?
No, I think it wasn't the fact that it was expensive. It was the fact that it was so much more expensive than its competitor, which is about 40, I think. Well, no, what I'm saying is that there is a competitor who offers their services for a lot less money, and so I don't know. Rob,
job. When I first became a councillor, we had those green bins and brown bins and everything, and it was nothing but controversy and nothing but complaints. Now you never get a complaint. I mean, quite a big ward, and we never get a complaint about waste, and everybody congratulates us on what happens. My black bin last Thursday was collected by 7:45 in the morning, and I live as far away from Melton as anybody does, and yet it was collected by 7:45 in the morning, and I think that wants minuting, that what a good service BIFA give us.
Rob, and this will be the last question because we must move on.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah,
the costs involved in this are somewhat eye-watering, to be totally honest. But I understand the new burdens funding and how this offsets that. But with regard to, we currently have 10,000 subscribers to green bins. With the potential, it would be offered to 25,000, but that's never ever going to happen. So if you were to say we had an extra 5,000 people that wanted green bins, is that a price or cost, if you want, that would be covered by the new burdens funding? Or would we be charging those bins to individuals that wanted them?
So under the legislative, the proposed changes, we would potentially have to offer that scheme out free of charge. So there'd be no income coming through to the council. So as a result of running that scheme from individual customers. So we would have the additional burden of collecting from, we now have 10,000 properties, we'd be doubling that and more to 25,000 properties. And that cost, there would be no offsetting of that cost. That would be entirely borne on us.
So there's that the new burdens funding wouldn't cover any increase in that cost.
It would do, yeah. So the new burdens would effectively, well, that's where food waste becomes difficult, because we are already running a semblance of a service. So we don't know yet whether it would be doubtful whether the government would cover the existing cost that we have and offset the income that we're producing. However, if we were to have to put another 2 rounds on, for example, that potentially could be. So the new burdens funding mechanisms are all yet to be worked out, and to be honest, are quite daunting just to even think about at the moment. So we'll certainly see how that comes out. But any new additional cost that's incurred by councils as a result of these changes is being mooted at the moment as being covered by new burdens funding.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much for that, Albert. That's very interesting. I think, of course, we all make waste, don't we? Now, we have a recommendation in front of us that the Scrutiny Committee notes the contents of the report and provides initial feedback. We have done that. And we, I think, are expected to provide some more feedback in the future. That's right, it'll be ongoing. So we don't have to vote on that, so I think that can be accepted. I think that's an interesting subject, and thanks again for attending and providing all that information. So now we'll move on to the number 9, the task and finish group final report. Adam, can you do me a huge favor? You know where there's a change to one of the recommendations. I must have left the change at home. Would you mind reading it out? Yeah, if that's okay. Of course, it follows the place report, which Rob led on, and so we're finally there. We have a final report. I think it's taken a lot of time. We've done an enormous amount of research. We didn't quite get the as much local information as we had wanted, but what we did get, has proved useful, and I think. I think this will provide a lot of information that the council will find useful, and hopefully it'll help us prepare for anything awful like this, which should happen again in the future. But what I will say is I think that overall this council responded absolutely tremendously to the real people in need. Most people with this, they just managed, they adapted and managed. Everyone was affected, absolutely everybody, but most of us just adapted. But those down the bottom, I think that they really struggled, and without Aisha and her team, I think that their lives would have been absolutely awful. So but we are where we are, and there's a lot of information, of course, which isn't in the report, but it can be accessed if anybody's that interested. So and now Adam will explain why one of the recommendations is being changed. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. During drafting of the report, it was noted that a paragraph was omitted from recommendation 5. So what's on the recommendation 5 is still on recommendation 5, but the following paragraph is to be added. In addition, the council should consider using the government's Kickstart scheme to employ a 16 to 24-year-old on universal credit or at risk of long-term unemployment to help residents develop their digital knowledge. And yeah, so that's going to be added to recommendation 5.
And there were some typos, weren't there? Yeah. I'm so sorry about this. We had it all up nicely written on a bit of paper to explain everything. So did you all follow that? Yeah, yeah. It's that last bit of the recommendation, it just fell off, and it was noticed quite late on. But I think it is important, and I think will help. I know there aren't many, and obviously the digitally excluded, you know, that they will. Most of them will just die off. But at the same time, right now, there are lots of people, and during the pandemic, of course, that they missed out, you know, because I know just a few people who are not on the internet, and they have really struggled. They've struggled with information, not knowing what to do. They've got newspapers, they've got radio, but they haven't had that sort of local stuff that you can get from our website, or you could get from our website. So yeah, so that recommendation 5 is changing, and that it'll be the changed document which goes to Cabinet. But yeah, any comments about the document, the actual final report, will be very welcome.
Can I just say, Chair, just to congratulate you and the team for what I think is an excellent piece of work. I found it very, very interesting reading through it, and there's just so much information, and I'm sure that members and officers alike will benefit from this in the future. Thanks.
Yeah.
Madam Chairman, sorry, just before we enter the debate, I wonder if we might just let the other officers go who've done their presentations, if that's. Oh, brilliant. Okay, apologies. Thank you very much.
You know, such a variety. We did add the appendix, and we hope that people will find that useful too. Otherwise, it's not easy to find stuff, is it? So, no comments? No, in which case we have a recommendation that the Scrutiny Committee approves and recommends to Cabinet the final report of the Scrutiny Response and Recovery People, Task and Finish Group. I don't think we need to vote on that, do we? We do need to vote on that. I'll beg your pardon. So if we can have a proposer.
Yeah, I'll propose
please.
it, Chair.
Thank you. And a seconder. Thank you. All those in favour? I presume that's unanimous. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, yeah. In which case, that's the end of the agenda. Sorry, it's gone on again, but we did have a lot on the agenda, didn't we, this meeting? A variety, not quite the same as last time. So yeah, thanks for your attendance, and call the meeting closed. I don't know what the time is because my watch isn't right. You've got the time, haven't you? Oh yeah. Oh right. Well, so just yeah. And thanks again for your contribution, and see you all soon. I hope you enjoyed that meeting, Ed.